1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The Black Fantasy Man.
Welcome everyone to yet another video on the channel. Today, I'm coming with knowledge from me to you. Now I need to say that most of these tips will be more geared toward fantasy authors, but they can be applied broadly, and a few of them are just true regardless of what you write. Applying these tips correctly will severely better your opportunity in the indie author world. You will stand out from competition who has not taken these tips, and as your skill increases, so too will your ability to apply these tips, and sales will follow. So let's get right into it. But we can pause just long enough for you to hit the subscribe button, because I have other videos like these and on a variety of other things related to indies coming out shortly. So take a millisecond, hit the subscribe button, and join me. I should mention that these tips are not necessarily in superior to inferior order, as in one is not necessarily greater than two, even though some of them are of varying levels of import, but they are all crucial. So let us begin. Number 1, establish your own voice. I have talked about this on a couple other videos on the channel. You can check those out if you wish, but it bears repeating. So many authors, I realize, just jump into writing and jump into trying to get the book done, but don't take that moment, that crucial period to establish their own unique voice, to find and harness the writing style that sets them apart from the person that just wrote a book yesterday or is writing a book at the same time that they are and is outputting that book as well. I can't stress how important this is to find and establish your own voice. When people read your book or books, they will come to know you by your voice, by your unique voice that speaks to them. And if it sounds identical to another author that they've also read and like very much, chances are they're not going to be too pleased about it. You see, readers like things that affect them, that hold them, that speak to them. So if your book speaks to them, but they find that it's speaking to them in a voice that they've already heard and are quite familiar with, they're going to call you on it. And that can actually very negatively impact you. People will accuse you of plagiarism, of copying, of stealing, all manner of stuff. And this is not to say that people's voices don't intersect, people's writing voices. Of course they do. There's so many millions and millions and millions and millions of books. Of course writing voices are going to intersect. Don't sweat that. Just make sure that the voice that you are writing in is comfortable and unique to you and does not feel like you're ripping from someone else, because readers will notice, and so will other authors. Number 2, get a custom cover designed. Now, I myself, whether I'm writing fantasy or reading fantasy, prefer covers that are illustrated. I think that the uniqueness of a custom illustration cannot be understated or overvalued. There's something about art, pure hand-drawn art, that just greatly appeals to me, and as it turns out, it appeals to a lot of other people as well. All of my covers, all of my epic fantasy covers, even of books that I have not yet released to the public but am working on, they are unique, never before seen illustrations, covers that were created specifically for my book, for my world. So no one's ever going to look at them and think, oh, that is so-and-so's cover. Oh, that looks like that photo that I saw on the newspaper. To me, personally, the benefits of a custom illustration can't be overstated. That's the route I prefer to go for my own works, and I like it when other fantasy authors go that route with their works as well. I really do. But that is not to say that other types of covers, specifically Photoshop or photo manipulation, are bad. There are some amazing, absolutely amazing Photoshop jobs, photo manipulation. It's great. It's all great. The thing we have run into in recent years with that kind of thing, though, is that so many people now are just going online, downloading some reusable cover that they bought off of a stock photo site. They're not making it original at all. They're just straight downloading it, putting it on a cover, putting words on it. All right, there's my book cover. And before you know it, you have about 25 books that have the same cover or variants thereof. For me, if I can see that a book cover was used 5 times, just tweaked ever so slightly on every different book that it was used on, that for me kind of turns me off. Especially if I can see them side by side, or I see them within a short period of time from each other, and it turns readers off too. Not all readers, but most of them. Turns out your readers like custom covers too. They like unique covers. So take the time to find a graphic designer or an illustrator. Fork over some of that dough. It's gonna cost you sometimes, but it's worth it. So fork over some of that dough and make sure that your cover is custom. Make sure that it is unique. Don't use images that appear on other books, but just with your font on them or a different shade, gradient, whatever, on the photo. To me, especially where fantasy is concerned, illustrations are best, but there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with photo manipulation and the magics that go along with that. Just be sure that it is unique. Readers remember it. After all, it is the absolute first thing that they see when they click on your book on Amazon or pick it up in a library or at a book event. So make sure that it's something that they have never seen before. Number 3. Create your own creatures and monsters. Now, to be fair, this is already pretty prevalent in the fantasy community, and indies are no exception. So it's not something that people aren't doing and making use of. Oh, they are, and they're making use of it. But to those of you who don't and aren't making use of it, start doing this thing. Yes, it's going to take a little more effort, a little more work, probably maybe some research on your part, but it is absolutely worth it. Readers like encountering creatures that they haven't encountered before. They enjoy picturing that creature in their own mind, reading about it eating people, or your protagonist's adventure / quest to destroy it, defeat it, or hearing about your protagonist encountering it on the road and it foiling their plans or making a nuisance. It also helps solidify and amplify your authority as a creator. Readers remember authors that create creatures that are unique and scare them, intrigue them, fascinate them. Readers really like that. So it's something that further keeps that story, your story, up here. And up here is where you want it. I am not saying don't use creatures that already exist, mythical creatures, whatever the case may be. I would say that some of them you want to avoid, but I'll maybe make another video on that sometime. But you can use them. Trolls, wolves, fairies, things like that. You can use things like that, okay? I'm not saying do not. What I am saying is that your story gets that much heavier when you create your own and they actually work, they stick, they're solidified. And if you get a good sounding name, you throw one of your creatures into your book description, and that automatically in itself makes your reader more inclined to pick up your book and actually read it or buy it off of Amazon when they see that name in the description and they're like, well, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of that kind of beast. Original creatures and monsters, because I'm differentiating between the two. It doesn't have to be a deadly thing. It could be some kind of beast of burden. Only aid your work, your prowess as an author, as a creator, as a world builder. And the more unique your world feels to your readers, the more they will fall in love with it, and the better it is for all involved. Number 4, add small little unique elements to your story. What do I mean by that? I mean, instead of making it the same old, okay, the city is walled and there's a moat around it, how about the city is built on an island in the middle of a lake? So instead of a city with walls, for instance, you have a city that is in the middle of a large lake. Imagine your characters go to visit this city for whatever reason, and part of the story is them remarking about the city. Little bits of history concerning the building and purpose of that city. Maybe a chapter or two on some downtime while they explore the city and get accustomed to it or whatever. Or maybe the story starts or ends in said city. Or, instead of the kingship passing on from son to son to son to son, maybe there's some other way that the crown passes from person to person. Maybe it doesn't pass from son to son to son. Maybe it passes from son to brother, from brother to uncle. Maybe it passes from father to daughter, and then from daughter to son, and then from son to dog. My point is, it doesn't have to be a big, giant detail. It could just be some little thing, some little spin, little twist on some well-known trope, good or bad, that you apply in your story. So whether that be a little discussion about some culture that's in your book, or whether it's a unique way that a certain city or a certain habitation gets water, those little things stick in readers' minds as well. And as we just discussed, you want things to stick in the reader's mind. Number 5, and you'll hear me talk about this so often, but it is so important. Make sure your books are well edited. I don't mean that if there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 little mistakes in there, little typos, that all is lost. That's not what I'm saying. But make sure that your consistency is tight. Make sure that there aren't errors on every other page. And make sure that your event lineup, timeline, at least is coherent. At least. And guess what? Out of those 3 things that I just mentioned, the spelling and grammar is the most important. Why? Because, oddly enough, readers will forgive certain plot holes sometimes. Readers will forgive certain inconsistencies. And certain inconsistencies can always be explained in later books if that's your kind of thing. But no one likes, nor will they forgive, an error-ridden book. Readers, potential buyers, are far less forgiving when it comes to typos all over the place. And you know what? Well, they should be. You, as an author, have a responsibility to make sure that you are presenting your best work to the people that you expect to pay money for your story. It's part of you as the author, as the creator, as the indie, doing your part and delivering to your readers. 9 times out of 10, if a potential buyer opens your book and reads the first page, 2 pages, and they are met with several errors, they will put that book right back down or close the Look Inside tab on Amazon. Because you know what that tells them? That immediately tells them that they are going to have to go the extra mile, that they are going to have to work more just to understand what you have written. No one wants to pick up a book that is going to have to force them to struggle to decipher what you're saying, which is exactly what you want them to do if your book is full of typos. Take some time, take some money, and pay an editor to go over your work. And number 6, create a culture that is unique, but please don't info dump on us. New cultures are great and fantastic and awesome. Cultures that we haven't heard about or that are similar to us but have a flavor of new, they are fascinating. We love to read about them as readers. What we don't like is for you to try and dump all the information and history and whether to's and why-fors of that culture on us the first time it's introduced. Nobody likes this. And I do get why some authors do it. Sometimes it does come from a place of, well, look, if I don't give them enough information about this culture, then they won't get why so-and-so is happening in the story. A valid concern. And you should give your readers enough information to know what's going on so that they won't be lost. But giving information and info dumping are 2 very different things. You can give them all the information that they need, but if it is a lot that has to be given, give it in intervals, sections. Some at a time, some at another time, a little more at a time, more at another time, so that they don't get bored. You can have the most unique, most fascinating culture ever, but if you just try to dump all of it on your reader at one time, it's going to feel like a history lecture. And unless those are the types of books you write, don't do it. You actually might be surprised to discover how much more a reader might be invested in your culture if you provide information about that culture as your story progresses. So as they get involved and concerned with the characters in the story and how the story is progressing, then they automatically get more involved with the culture. Oftentimes, if they care about your character and story enough, they will actually read an info dump at a later point in the book. They will not read an info dump the very first thing. So don't do that. Keeping these things in mind whenever you are creating any new work or modifying an old work will ensure that your voice, your story, will be apart and beyond many other voices that are clamoring to be heard. So apply these 6 tips. I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that you will be glad you did and that you will see results from them. No question about it. Also, I have provided in the description below a link to a site where you guys can hire freelance editors and illustrators. This site is called Upwork. It has tons of illustrators, artists, editors on there. They are freelance, but you do all your transactions through the site. So you can view their stats, their work, what they've done, rates and all that, and then the transaction is done through the site, so the risk is very low. Of course, you will need to find the best person to work with for you, but once you do that, you should have a solid service in your bag. And that's all for this round. Until the next video.